My name is Sophia, and I just turned 28 years old. I was always the good daughter, the responsible one who tried her hardest to make everyone proud. For months, I planned what was supposed to be the perfect birthday celebration, only to have my parents choose my sister Jessica's impromptu dinner over my special day. That single decision shattered my heart, but ultimately sparked a revolution within me. Little did they know that their betrayal would lead me to find my true worth in the most unexpected way. If you want to know how I turned my family's rejection into the greatest triumph of my life, stick around. Before I dive into my story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself. Trust me, you'll want to hear how I transformed my family's betrayal into the best decision I ever made. Growing up in Minneapolis, I always felt like I was living in Jessica's shadow. From the moment my sister was born when I was 3, it seemed like the spotlight in our family permanently shifted away from me. Jessica was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the one who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. My sister is 25 now, 3 years younger than me, but she's always been the center of my parents' universe. Linda and Michael, my parents, never tried to hide their favoritism. When Jessica wanted ballet lessons, they drove her 45 minutes each way to the best studio in the state. When I asked for art classes, I got a sketchbook from the dollar store and was told to practice at home. Jessica got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a used bicycle for mine. The pattern was consistent throughout our childhood. Despite this, I pushed myself to excel. I graduated top of my class in high school, earned a partial scholarship to college, and worked part-time jobs to cover the rest. Now I'm a marketing executive at a respected firm in the city. I climbed the corporate ladder faster than anyone expected, and I'm proud of what I've accomplished on my own. But there was always this small part of me that still craved my parents' approval, that still hoped one day they would look at me with the same pride they reserved for Jessica. That hope is what made me so excited about my 20th birthday. For once, I wanted to do something special for myself that my family would have to acknowledge. I found this exclusive restaurant downtown that everyone had been raving about. The place was so popular you needed to make reservations 3 months in advance, which I did. I reserved a private dining area for 8 people, my parents, Jessica, a few close friends, and myself. I planned everything down to the smallest detail. I requested time off work 3 months in advance. I sent out beautiful invitations 6 weeks before the date. I even scheduled a call with the chef to discuss the menu and make sure there would be options for my dad's dietary restrictions. This dinner wasn't just a meal. It was going to be an experience, a statement that I too deserved to be celebrated. When I called my parents to make sure they'd received their invitation, they seemed genuinely excited. My mom asked what she should wear, and my dad joked about finally getting to try the restaurant that all his golf buddies had been talking about. They promised they wouldn't miss it for the world. Jessica also confirmed, though she seemed less enthusiastic, asking if she could bring her new boyfriend, Travis. I agreed, happy that my whole family would be there. As the weeks passed, I couldn't help but get more excited. I started imagining the evening, the elegant setting, delicious food, meaningful conversations, maybe even a heartfelt toast from my father. Was it too much to hope that for one night, just one special occasion, I could be the focus of my family's attention? After 28 years of playing second fiddle, was it unreasonable to want my birthday to be about me? I saved up for months to afford this dinner. The restaurant was well beyond my usual budget, but I thought it would be worth it to create a memorable experience. I even bought a new dress, a beautiful deep blue number that made me feel confident and special. I scheduled a hair appointment for the afternoon of my birthday and splurged on a professional makeup session. For once in my life, I wasn't going to be practical Sophia who always puts everyone else first. This was going to be my night to shine. The week before my birthday, I called everyone to confirm. My friends all responded immediately, excited for the celebration. My parents didn't pick up, but they texted back later saying they were still planning to attend. Jessica didn't respond at all, which wasn't unusual. She had a habit of confirming plans and then being vague about follow-ups, knowing she could always count on our parents to defend her if she flaked at the last minute. Still, I chose to believe that this time would be different. This time, surely my family would show up for me. Looking back, I was setting myself up for disappointment. But hope is a powerful thing, and after years of being overlooked, I desperately needed to believe that my birthday could be the turning point, the moment when my family finally saw me as someone worth celebrating. The morning of my birthday started like any other day. I woke up to a few text messages from friends wishing me happy birthday, but nothing particularly special from my family. My mom sent a brief, "Happy birthday, sweetie," text, and my dad added me to a group chat with extended family members for birthday wishes. Jessica didn't reach out at all. I tried not to let it bother me. After all, the real celebration would be that evening. I went to work where my colleagues had decorated my desk with balloons and brought cupcakes. It was sweet, but I was saving my excitement for dinner. Throughout the day, I kept checking my phone, half expecting my parents or Jessica to send something more meaningful, perhaps explaining why their initial messages had been so casual. But nothing came. At 3 o'clock, I left work early for my hair and makeup appointments. As the stylist worked on my hair, I sent a quick message to the family group chat, looking forward to seeing everyone at 7 tonight. I included the restaurant address and a reminder about the parking situation. No one responded immediately, which started to make me nervous, but I pushed the feeling aside. They were probably just busy getting ready. By 5:30, I was back at my apartment, slipping into my new dress and feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. I still hadn't heard from anyone in my family since my reminder text. I decided to call my mom directly, but the call went to voicemail. I tried my dad with the same result. A knot started forming in my stomach, but I told myself they were probably driving or getting ready. At 5:45, just as I was putting on my jewelry, my phone buzzed. Finally. But it wasn't the confirmation I was hoping for. It was a text from my mother. "Sorry, sweetie, something came up. We won't be able to make it tonight. Have fun with your friends. We can do family dinner another time. Love you." I stood frozen, staring at my phone in disbelief. Something came up? On my birthday? The birthday dinner I had been planning for 3 months? I immediately called my mother, my hands shaking. This time, she picked up. "Mom, what do you mean you can't make it? What came up?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the desperation creeping in. "Oh, Sophia." She sighed in that way she always did when she thought I was overreacting. "Jessica got invited to meet Travis's parents tonight. It was very last minute, and you know how important first impressions are. His family is very well connected, and this could be a great opportunity for her." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But Mom, it's my birthday. The reservation, the private dining room, I've been planning this for months. Can't Jessica meet Travis's parents another time?" "Sweetie, you know it doesn't work that way. When opportunities come up, you have to take them. Jessica really likes this boy, and his parents are only in town for tonight. You understand, right? You've always been so good about these things." The familiar feeling of being pushed aside for Jessica washed over me, but this time it came with a sharp new pain. This wasn't just any day. This was my birthday, the one day a year when even I thought I deserved to be prioritized. "Is Dad coming at least?" I asked, clinging to a final thread of hope. "Of course not. We both need to be there to support Jessica. Meeting the boyfriend's parents is a big step." I ended the call shortly after, too stunned to argue further. Within minutes, I received a text from Jessica. "Sorry about dinner. Travis's parents wanted to meet up. You know how it is. Have fun though." No apology. No acknowledgement of what she was missing. Just a casual dismissal of the event I had spent months planning. And the worst part? She knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't an unavoidable conflict. It was a dinner she had accepted after knowing about my birthday plans. She could have suggested another night to meet Travis's parents, but she didn't. And our parents, as always, chose her. I called my father next, hoping that maybe he would understand, that maybe he would choose to come to my birthday even if Mom and Jessica wouldn't. But the conversation went exactly as I feared. "Dad, please. Just you come to dinner. Jessica has Mom with her. Sophia, be reasonable. This is important for your sister's future. Travis's family has connections that could help her career. We need to make a good impression as a family. And my birthday isn't important." I asked, my voice breaking. Of course it is, but you're 28, not 8. You have friends coming, right? You'll still have a nice time. We can celebrate this weekend instead. But I knew we wouldn't. There would always be some reason, some excuse why Jessica's needs took precedence over mine. This wasn't new behavior. It was just the most painful example in a lifetime of similar choices. As I hung up the phone, I caught my reflection in the mirror. There I was, all dressed up in my beautiful new outfit, makeup perfectly done, hair styled elegantly, and a look of utter devastation on my face. For the first time in my life, I didn't just feel overlooked or second best. I felt completely insignificant to the people who were supposed to love me most in the world. With less than an hour until the reservation, I had to make some quick, painful decisions. First, I called the restaurant to update our party size. When the hostess asked why I was reducing the reservation from 8 to 4 people at the last minute, I had to choke back tears as I explained that my family had canceled. The sympathy in her voice only made me feel worse. I'm sorry, but we'll still have to charge you for the original party size, she said gently. Our policy for the private dining room requires at least 48 hours notice for changes. So not only was my birthday ruined emotionally, but I was also losing hundreds of dollars on meals that wouldn't be eaten. I agreed to the charges, too defeated to argue. Next, I had to tell my friends what happened. These were people who had cleared their schedules to celebrate with me, who were excited to meet my family. Now I had to explain that my parents and sister had chosen a last-minute dinner over my carefully planned birthday celebration. I sent a group text, slight change of plans. It'll just be us tonight. Family emergency came up. I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. It was too humiliating. By the time I arrived at the restaurant, I had managed to compose myself enough to fake a smile. My 3 friends were already there, having coordinated among themselves to arrive early. They greeted me with hugs and birthday wishes, but I could see the questions in their eyes when they noticed my family's absence. So, what's the family emergency? Asked Alyssa, my closest friend since college. Jessica had something important come up, and my parents needed to be there, I said vaguely. On your birthday. Alyssa's tone was incredulous. She knew enough about my family dynamic to read between the lines. It's fine, I insisted, though it clearly wasn't. Let's just enjoy the evening. The private dining room, designed for 8, felt cavernous with just 4 of us. The empty chairs were constant reminders of the people who should have been there but chose not to be. My friends did their best to keep the conversation light and festive, but there was an undeniable awkwardness hanging over the dinner. When the server brought out a small cake at the end of the meal, singing happy birthday with my friends, I nearly broke down. This moment, which should have been joyful, just highlighted everything that was missing. I blew out the candles without making a wish. At that point, I didn't believe wishes came true anymore. Alyssa insisted on paying for the cake, knowing I was already covering the cost of 4 empty places. It was a kind gesture, but it didn't ease the ache in my chest. By 9:30, the dinner was over, much earlier than I had planned. My friends offered to continue the celebration elsewhere, but I declined. I just wanted the night to be over. Back at my apartment, I placed the small pile of gifts from my friends on the coffee table, but couldn't bring myself to open them. Instead, I sat on my couch in my beautiful dress, makeup smudged from fighting back tears throughout the evening, and finally let myself cry. Really cry. The deep, body-shaking kind of crying that comes from a place of profound hurt. Years of suppressed feelings came pouring out. I wasn't just crying about tonight's betrayal, but about a lifetime of being the less important daughter. About always understanding, always accommodating, always putting Jessica first, because that's what my parents expected. About working so hard for recognition that never came. About foolishly believing that this birthday would somehow be different. I checked my phone before going to bed. Nothing from my dad. My mom had sent a casual text asking, "How was dinner? Did your friends like the restaurant?" As if her absence was completely normal. Jessica had posted nothing about my birthday, but her Instagram showed a new post. A photo of her and Travis with our parents and an older couple, presumably Travis's parents. The caption read, "So blessed to have such amazing family support. #family first #meeting the parents." The hashtag family first felt like a deliberate slap in the face. Whose family put them first? Certainly not mine. I spent the night alternating between tears and a strange, hollow feeling. Sleep came in short, restless bursts. By morning, my eyes were swollen and my head pounded from dehydration and emotional exhaustion. The next day was Saturday, and I had taken it off work, anticipating a late night celebrating. Instead, I woke up early, feeling empty. My phone showed birthday messages from acquaintances and colleagues, but nothing new from my family. It was as if last night never happened, as if their choice hadn't shattered something fundamental in our relationship. Around noon, my mother called as if it were any normal Saturday. "Good morning, sweetie. Your father and I were thinking of having a barbecue next weekend. Can you come?" Jessica said Travis might join us. No mention of my birthday. No acknowledgement of what they had done. No apology. "Did you have a nice dinner last night?" she asked casually when I didn't immediately respond to her barbecue invitation. "It was fine," I said flatly, not having the energy to express my true feelings. What would be the point? They would dismiss them as they always did. "That's nice, dear. So about the barbecue." As she continued talking, making plans that centered around Jessica and her new boyfriend, something shifted inside me. The raw pain of the previous night began crystallizing into something harder, something that felt like resolve. For the first time, I saw with complete clarity that nothing I did would ever change the dynamic in my family. No achievement, no carefully planned event, nothing would ever make them see me as equally deserving of their attention and care. The realization should have devastated me further, but instead, it felt oddly liberating. If nothing I did would ever be enough, then why keep trying? Why keep seeking approval from people who were constitutionally unable to give it to me? Then came the final straw. As my mother was wrapping up the call, she added, "Oh, and Jessica mentioned she's thinking about looking for a new apartment closer to downtown. I told her you'd help her search since you know the area so well. Maybe next weekend after the barbecue." She wasn't asking if I could help. She was telling me what I would be doing with my time. As always, Jessica's needs were presented as family priorities that I was expected to accommodate without question. "I'll think about it," I said, surprising both of us with my non-committal response. Normally, I would have agreed immediately, eager to be helpful, to be the good daughter. "What do you mean you'll think about it?" "Your sister needs help, Sophia." "I'm busy next weekend," I lied, having no plans whatsoever. "I'll let you know." I ended the call shortly after, leaving my mother confused and slightly annoyed. But for the first time in my adult life, I didn't care if I had upset her. The person who needed care and consideration right now was me. The day after my ruined birthday became the first day of my new life, though I didn't know it yet. After that phone call with my mother, I spent the entire weekend in my apartment, thinking. Really thinking about my life, my family, and what I wanted for my future. I realized I had been chasing my parents' approval for 28 years, and it had gotten me nowhere. On Monday morning, instead of going to work, I called in sick for the first time in years. I needed a day to myself, to process everything and make some decisions. The first thing I did was review my finances. As someone who had been financially independent since college, I had always been careful with money. I had an emergency fund, retirement savings, and a separate account I called my someday fund, which was for some undefined future goal. Looking at the balance of my someday fund, I was surprised by how much I had accumulated. It wasn't a fortune, but it was substantial, especially for someone my age. But what was I saving for? Some vague future that might never come? Or was I subconsciously waiting for a moment just like this, a moment when I would need to make a significant change? Almost on a whim, I started browsing real estate listings. I had always dreamed of owning my own place, but living in the city meant sky-high prices for tiny apartments. On a hunch, I expanded my search to include properties within a 2-hour radius of the city. That's when I saw it. A charming country house with a wraparound porch, sitting on just over 2 acres of land. The listing described it as needing TLC, which explained the surprisingly affordable price tag. The house was in a small town called Willow Creek, about an hour and 45 minutes from the city. Close enough that I could commute if necessary, but far enough to feel like a true escape. I called the real estate agent immediately and scheduled a viewing for the next day. Taking another day off work felt rebellious and completely unlike me, but I was running on a new kind of energy. It felt like I had spent years sleepwalking through a life designed to please others, and now I was finally truly awake. The drive to Willow Creek took me through rolling countryside that grew increasingly scenic as I got farther from the city. By the time I pulled up to the address, I was already half in love with the area. The house itself, despite its obvious need for repairs, had an undeniable charm. It was a two-story farmhouse-style building, painted a faded yellow with white trim. The wraparound porch was sagging in places, and several of the shutters were hanging crooked, but I could see the potential immediately. Andrea, the real estate agent, greeted me with a look of surprise. Clearly, I wasn't the typical client looking at rural fixer-uppers. She walked me through the house, pointing out both the problems and the possibilities. The inside needed even more work than the exterior. Outdated kitchen, peeling wallpaper in some rooms, creaky floorboards. But the bones of the house were solid, and features like the original hardwood floors, a brick fireplace, and large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light more than made up for the cosmetic issues. "It's going to need quite a bit of work," Andrea warned. "Are you looking for a renovation project?" The truth was, I hadn't been. But standing in what could be my future living room, watching dust motes dance in the sunbeams, I suddenly knew that this was exactly what I needed, a project that was all mine, a place where I could pour my energy into something that would give back to me exactly what I put into it. No more one-sided relationships where I gave and gave with nothing in return. "Yes," I said confidently. "This is exactly what I'm looking for." I made an offer that afternoon, slightly below asking price, but still reasonable given the condition of the property. Andrea seemed skeptical, but submitted it anyway. The next morning, to my shock and delight, my offer was accepted. The owners were motivated to sell quickly, and my clean offer without complicated contingencies was attractive. The closing process moved surprisingly fast. I qualified for a mortgage easily thanks to my excellent credit score and stable employment. I chose not to tell anyone about my purchase, not even my closest friends. This was my secret, my project, something that belonged only to me. For once in my life, I wanted to do something significant without seeking anyone's approval or advice. Throughout the closing process, life with my family continued as normal. I attended the barbecue my mother had mentioned, where Jessica monopolized the conversation with stories about Travis and his family's connections. I smiled and nodded in all the right places, but inside I was buzzing with my secret. While they were all focused on Jessica's potential new apartment, I had just bought an entire house. I did end up helping Jessica look at apartments the following weekend, playing my usual supportive sister role. The difference was that now it felt like a choice rather than an obligation. I knew I was on my way to something better, something that was all mine, and that knowledge gave me a sense of freedom I had never experienced before. The house closing happened on a Tuesday, 32 days after my disastrous birthday. I signed the papers during my lunch break and returned to work with the keys to my new country house in my purse, feeling like I was walking on air. That evening, I drove out to the property, my property, and spent an hour just walking through the empty rooms, making plans and dreaming about what it could become. I took a week to research renovation strategies and create a budget before diving into the work. YouTube tutorials became my constant companions as I learned about everything from stripping wallpaper to refinishing hardwood floors. I created a detailed renovation plan, prioritizing projects by necessity and budget. The kitchen and bathroom would need professional help, but there was plenty I could tackle myself. The house quickly became my sanctuary, my secret joy. Every Friday after work, I would drive out to Willow Creek and spend the entire weekend working on the house, returning to my apartment and city job on Sunday nights. I bought tools and supplies a bit at a time to spread out the expenses. Each small improvement filled me with a sense of accomplishment that I had rarely experienced in other areas of my life. All the while, my family remained completely unaware. When they asked about my weekends, I gave vague answers about projects and taking some me time. They rarely pressed for details, which only confirmed what I already knew. They weren't particularly interested in my life unless it directly affected theirs. The renovation process became my therapy. For 3 months, I devoted every weekend and many weeknights to transforming the country house into my dream home. The physical labor was exhausting, but incredibly satisfying. There was something deeply healing about tearing out the old and broken to make way for something new and beautiful. I started with the most visible issues. The porch had several rotted boards that needed replacing, and the exterior paint was peeling badly. I spent 2 full weekends just scraping, sanding, and repainting the outside of the house, changing it from faded yellow to a soft sage green with crisp white trim. The transformation was dramatic, and neighbors I hadn't even met yet stopped to compliment the improvement. One of those neighbors was Jim, a retired contractor who lived down the road. After watching me struggle with replacing the porch boards for an hour, he wandered over and offered some advice. That single interaction led to a friendship that proved invaluable. Jim was happy to teach me basic carpentry skills and lend me specialized tools I couldn't afford to buy. In return, I helped him set up a computer and taught him how to use video calling to stay in touch with his grandchildren. Inside the house, I tackled one room at a time. I started with the main bedroom, stripping decades-old wallpaper and repainting in a soothing blue-gray. I refinished the original hardwood floors, a grueling process that left me with aching muscles, but floors that gleamed with warm honey tones. When the room was finally finished, I treated myself to new bedding and curtains, creating a peaceful retreat that felt worlds away from my sterile city apartment. The kitchen required professional help for the plumbing and electrical work, but I did the demolition myself, taking immense satisfaction in smashing the outdated cabinets with a sledgehammer. There was something symbolic about destroying the old to make way for the new, both in the house and in my life. While waiting for the kitchen contractors, I focused on the living room, dining room, and bathroom. Each space presented unique challenges, but with every problem I solved, my confidence grew. I wasn't just renovating a house, I was rebuilding myself, discovering strengths and abilities I never knew I possessed. The small town of Willow Creek embraced me in a way I hadn't expected. Unlike the city where neighbors barely acknowledged each other, here people went out of their way to introduce themselves. When Rose, who owned the local hardware store, heard about my renovation project, she started setting aside interesting architectural salvage items she thought might suit the character of my house. Carol, who ran the diner on Main Street, would save me a slice of pie on Saturdays, claiming I needed the energy for all the work I was doing. These new friendships were different from any I had experienced before. These people liked me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. They respected my independence and admired my determination to renovate the house largely on my own. Their support was offered freely, without the complex strings attached that characterized my family relationships. Meanwhile, back in the city, my family continued their usual patterns, completely unaware of my transformation. My parents still called with expectations rather than inquiries, still centered every family event around Jessica's needs and wants. The difference was that now, instead of feeling hurt by their behavior, I felt increasingly detached from it. I started setting small boundaries, testing the waters. When my mother called on a Wednesday evening asking me to help Jessica move into her new apartment that weekend, I simply said no. "What do you mean, no?" she asked, genuinely confused. "I mean I have other plans this weekend that I can't change," I said calmly. "What plans? What could be more important than helping your sister?" In the past, this question would have made me feel guilty and selfish. Now it just confirmed that I was making the right choice in creating a life separate from them. "My plans are important to me," I said. "I'm sure Jessica can find someone else to help or hire movers." The conversation ended with my mother obviously annoyed, but unable to change my mind. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had prioritized my own needs without apologizing. Jessica was even more surprised by my refusal than our mother had been. She called me directly, something she rarely did. "Mom said you won't help me move this weekend," she said, her tone accusing. "That's right. I have other commitments." "Like what?" You never have plans." Her statement stung, but also made me laugh internally. She was right that in the past, I rarely had plans that couldn't be changed to accommodate family requests. But she was wrong in assuming she knew anything about my current life. Things change, Jessica. I have a lot going on right now, but I need help. Travis is useless with this stuff, and Mom and Dad are too old to carry furniture. "I'm sure you'll figure something out," I said, echoing the dismissive phrase she had used countless times when I needed her help. The call ended with Jessica frustrated and me feeling strangely empowered. It was becoming easier to stand up for myself, to protect the new life I was building. By the 3-month mark, the major renovations were complete. The kitchen now featured white shaker cabinets, butcher block countertops, and a farmhouse sink. The bathroom had been updated with classic black and white tile and modern fixtures that still honored the house's vintage character. Every room had been painted, every floor refinished. The transformation was remarkable, not just in the physical space, but in myself as well. I had lost weight from all the physical labor, gained muscle I never had before, and developed a confidence that came from solving problems and mastering new skills. I walked taller, spoke more assertively, and felt more comfortable in my own skin than I ever had before. The house had become more than just a weekend retreat, it had become my true home. I started bringing more of my belongings from the city apartment each trip, gradually transitioning my life. I even began researching remote work options within my company, thinking about the possibility of making the move permanent. All of this change happened while my family remained completely unaware. They noticed I was less available, that I sometimes took longer to respond to texts or calls, but they didn't press for details. Their lack of curiosity about my life, which had once hurt me, now served my purpose perfectly. I was free to transform my life without their interference or judgment. As summer turned to early fall, I realized it was time to make some decisions. My apartment lease in the city would be up for renewal soon. The country house renovations were largely complete, and a family event was approaching that would bring everything to a head: the annual Labor Day barbecue at my parents' house, a tradition that typically involved extended family and close friends. For the first time, I was considering not attending. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. What would it mean to simply opt out of a family obligation? How would they react? But as the event grew closer, I realized that avoiding it would only delay the inevitable confrontation. Perhaps it was time to reveal my secret, to let my family see the new life I had created for myself on my terms. With that decision made, I spent the final week before the barbecue putting finishing touches on the house. I hung artwork, arranged furniture, and planted flowers along the front path. By the time Labor Day weekend arrived, my country house wasn't just habitable. It was beautiful, a true reflection of who I had become. I drove to my parents' house that Sunday with a strange sense of calm. Whatever happened today, I knew I had created something valuable for myself, something that couldn't be diminished by their reaction or lack of interest. For the first time in my life, I was going to a family event not seeking approval, but simply as my authentic self. The annual Labor Day barbecue was in full swing when I arrived. My parents' backyard was filled with the usual suspects: a few neighbors, some colleagues of my father's, my mother's book club friends, and various relatives who lived close enough to attend. I spotted Jessica immediately, holding court near the grill with Travis by her side, his arm draped possessively around her waist. I greeted everyone politely but without my usual eagerness to please. Several people commented that I looked different, though they couldn't quite put their finger on what had changed. I accepted their compliments with a simple "thank you," no longer feeling the need to deflect positive attention as I once would have. My mother was busy playing hostess, flitting from group to group with trays of appetizers and refilled drinks. She gave me a quick hug when I arrived, but was clearly distracted. My father was manning the grill, deep in conversation with Travis and 2 of his golf buddies. Neither of my parents seemed particularly interested in catching up with me, which was nothing new but felt especially ironic given what I was about to reveal. I helped myself to a drink and some food, then found a spot at one of the patio tables where I could observe the scene. Jessica kept glancing my way, clearly noticing my unusual independence. Typically, I would have been helping my mother serve food or engaged in conversation with whomever seemed most isolated. Today, I was content to sit quietly and wait for the right moment. That moment came sooner than expected. Just as my father was serving the grilled chicken and burgers, Jessica clinked her glass with a fork, calling for everyone's attention. My stomach tightened, somehow knowing what was coming. "Travis and I have an announcement to make," she said, beaming as Travis moved to stand beside her. "We're engaged." The backyard erupted in cheers and congratulations. My mother burst into tears of joy, and my father shook Travis's hand vigorously before pulling him into a hug. Family members surrounded the happy couple, admiring the engagement ring and asking about wedding plans. I offered my congratulations when the crowd around them thinned, giving Jessica a brief hug and telling Travis welcome to the family. Their engagement wasn't a surprise. They had been dating for nearly a year, and Jessica had been dropping hints about marriage for months. What was surprising was how little I felt about the news. In the past, I would have been hurt by not being told privately before the public announcement, by not being included in the moment. Now, I simply accepted that this was how our relationship worked. As the excitement began to settle, Jessica started discussing potential wedding venues, making it clear she was envisioning a large, elaborate affair. "Of course," she added, looking directly at me, "Sophia will be my maid of honor and will help with all the planning. She's so good at organizing things." There it was, the assumption that my time and energy were hers to claim, without even the courtesy of asking. Before I could respond, my mother jumped in. "Oh yes, Sophia will be such a help. And she can host the bridal shower at her apartment. It's small, but we can make it work." "Actually," my father added, "we were thinking you could contribute to the wedding costs, Sophia. We know you've been saving, and this is such an important event for the family." The three of them continued discussing how I would contribute to Jessica's wedding, all without asking if I was willing or able to take on these responsibilities and expenses. It was such a perfect encapsulation of our family dynamic that I almost laughed. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, clearly but not unkindly, "I won't be able to host the bridal shower at my apartment." They all turned to look at me, surprised by the interruption to their planning. "Why not?" my mother asked. "We can help you clean up before the event." "Because I'm giving up my apartment," I said simply. "My lease is up at the end of the month, and I'm not renewing it." This got their full attention. "Are you moving to a new place in the city?" Jessica asked. "Not exactly," I replied, pulling out my phone. "I bought a house." I showed them a photo of my country house, now beautifully renovated with its fresh paint, flourishing garden, and welcoming front porch complete with a swing. "What is this?" my father asked, taking my phone to look more closely at the image. "It's my house," I repeated. "I bought it 3 months ago, and I've been renovating it on weekends. It's in Willow Creek, about 2 hours from here." The stunned silence that followed was something I'll never forget. My parents and Jessica stared at me as if I'd just announced I was moving to Mars. "You bought a house?" "Without telling anyone." My mother sounded personally offended, as if my independent decision was a direct attack on her. "Yes," I said. "I found it the day after my birthday, made an offer, and closed a month later." The reference to my birthday wasn't lost on them. A flicker of discomfort crossed my mother's face, quickly replaced by indignation. "But why would you buy a house so far away? All your family is here. Your job is here. It doesn't make any sense." "It makes sense to me," I said, taking back my phone and scrolling through more photos of the renovation process. I did most of the work myself. Learned how to refinish floors, replace drywall, even some basic plumbing. Jessica grabbed the phone from my hands, scrolling through the photos with increasing agitation. "This is what you've been doing when you said you were busy? This is why you couldn't help me move?" "Yes," I said simply. "But why keep it a secret?" my father asked, his tone suggesting I had done something underhanded rather than simply made a private decision about my own life. "I wanted something that was just mine," I explained. "Something I did for myself, by myself." "That's so selfish," Jessica said immediately. "You know we would have helped you if you'd asked." "Would they though? Would they have driven 2 hours each way to help me sand floors or paint walls? Would they have put their plans on hold to support my project the way they constantly expected me to support Jessica's endeavors? We all knew the answer. I didn't need help, I said. I enjoyed doing it myself. And I made some great friends in Willow Creek who pitched in when I needed an extra hand. Friends? What friends? You don't know anyone there, my mother said dismissively. I do now. There's Jim, who taught me carpentry, Rose at the hardware store, Carol, who owns the diner, and several others. Willow Creek is a friendly place. My parents exchanged concerned glances, clearly struggling to process this new, independent version of their older daughter. My father, always practical, shifted to financial concerns. How could you afford this? Houses aren't cheap, even in small towns. I've been saving for years, I said. I qualified for a mortgage easily with my credit score and salary. And the house needed work, which made it affordable. Most of the renovations I did myself, which saved a lot of money. My mother, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. We always taught you to be financially responsible, she said, attempting to take credit for my achievement. I'm glad those lessons sank in. And now you can help with Jessica's wedding expenses, my father added, bringing the conversation full circle to their original expectations. Actually, no, I said firmly. I've invested most of my savings in the house, and I'll need to build my emergency fund back up. I'm happy to help Jessica with planning if she asks me directly, but I can't contribute financially to the wedding. Jessica's face flushed with anger. So you spend all your money on some impulsive house purchase, and now you can't help with my wedding? That's so typical, Sophia. Always thinking of yourself. The irony of her statement was breathtaking. For 28 years, I had rarely put myself first, had consistently compromised my needs, and once for the sake of family harmony, had been the reliable, responsible daughter they could always count on to fill whatever role they assigned me. The one time I made a significant decision based solely on what I wanted, I was labeled selfish. Rather than argue, I simply showed them more photos of the house. The kitchen with its farmhouse sink and open shelving, the cozy living room centered around the original brick fireplace, the reading nook I'd created in the upstairs landing with a window seat overlooking the garden. It's beautiful, admitted Travis, speaking up for the first time. His genuine admiration earned him a sharp look from Jessica. Thank you, I said, appreciating his honesty. I'm having a housewarming party next weekend if anyone wants to come see it in person. My invitation was met with awkward silence. It was clear from their expressions that none of them had any intention of driving 2 hours to celebrate my achievement. Well, we're very busy with engagement celebrations, my mother finally said. But maybe sometime in the future. I nodded, unsurprised. The invitation is open whenever you want to visit. As the barbecue continued, I could feel the subtle shift in how people interacted with me. Word of my house purchase spread quickly among the guests, and suddenly relatives who had barely spoken to me in years were curious about my renovation stories. A few even asked for the address, saying they might stop by if they were ever in the area. Jessica, predictably, tried to reclaim attention by discussing wedding plans in detail with anyone who would listen. But for once, she wasn't the only center of interest at a family gathering. It was a small change, but a significant one. As the afternoon wore on, I felt increasingly ready to leave. I had said what I needed to say and revealed what I needed to reveal. There was no dramatic confrontation, no tearful reconciliation, just the quiet establishment of a new reality. I was no longer the daughter who would always be available, always put family first at her own expense, always play the supporting role in the Jessica show. I said my goodbyes earlier than I typically would, explaining that I had a long drive ahead of me. My parents seemed confused. You're going back to your apartment, right? My mother asked. No, I'm going home, I said, the word home carrying new weight and meaning. To Willow Creek. As I drove away from my parents' house, I felt a complex mix of emotions, relief that the revelation was over, pride in what I had accomplished, and a touch of sadness for the family relationships that might never be what I had once hoped they could be. But most of all, I felt free. Free to define myself on my own terms, free to create a life that fulfilled me without constant reference to others' expectations. Back at my country house that evening, I sat on the porch swing as the sun set over the rolling hills surrounding my property. I pulled out my phone and composed a simple Instagram post, a photo of me smiling on the porch of my new home, with the caption, "Sometimes the best birthday gift is the one you give yourself." #new beginnings, #homeowner. I hit post without overthinking it, then put my phone away and simply enjoyed the quiet beauty of my surroundings, content in the knowledge that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The weeks following my revelation at the family barbecue brought changes I hadn't fully anticipated. The first surprise came 3 days after the event when my phone rang with an unfamiliar local number from Willow Creek. "Sophia? This is Martha from the town council. Jim mentioned you work in marketing, and we're looking for someone to help promote our annual harvest festival. Would you be interested in consulting? It would be a paid position, though admittedly small by city standards. The opportunity to use my professional skills locally, to become more integrated into the community, felt like a sign that I was on the right path. I agreed immediately, and that single project led to others, with small businesses in Willow Creek and neighboring towns asking for my help with websites and social media strategies. The second surprise came in the form of tentative reconciliation attempts from my family. My mother called a week after the barbecue, her tone unusually subdued. "We were thinking of driving out to see your house this Sunday, if the invitation is still open," she said. I could hear the effort it took for her to make this gesture. "Of course," I replied, keeping my excitement measured. "I'd love to give you the tour." When my parents arrived that Sunday, their reactions to the house revealed much about their characters. My father immediately focused on the quality of my renovation work, inspecting the refinished floors and new kitchen cabinets with grudging approval. My mother vacillated between genuine admiration for what I had accomplished and barely concealed concern about my choice to live so far from civilization. "It's very charming," she said, clearly searching for the right word. "But don't you get lonely out here all by yourself?" "Not at all," I told her truthfully. "I have my work, my projects, and I've made good friends here. It's a real community, the kind where people actually know their neighbors." They stayed for just under 2 hours, long enough to see the house and garden, but not long enough for any meaningful conversation about the changes in our relationship. As they were leaving, my father surprised me with an awkward but seemingly sincere hug. "You did good, Sophia," he said gruffly. "Didn't know you had it in you to tackle a project like this." It wasn't an apology for years of favoritism, but it was perhaps the most direct compliment he had ever given me. I accepted it for what it was, a small step toward a more balanced relationship. Jessica took longer to come around. Her initial response to my independence was predictably self-centered, framing my choices as deliberate obstacles to her wedding plans. But curiosity eventually got the better of her, and about a month after the barbecue, she asked if she and Travis could visit. Their visit was a turning point in our relationship. Away from our parents' influence, in a space that was entirely mine, Jessica saw me differently. As I showed them around the property, pointing out all the work I'd done with my own hands, I could see a new respect forming in her eyes. "I had no idea you could do all this," she said, running her hand along the kitchen countertop I had installed myself. "Neither did I, until I tried," I replied. Travis, who worked in real estate development, was genuinely impressed by the transformation I had achieved on a limited budget. His professional appreciation of my work seemed to influence Jessica's perspective as well. Over dinner at my newly refinished dining table, our conversation took an unexpected turn. "Do you remember my 10th birthday?" Jessica asked suddenly. "When Mom and Dad got me that elaborate dollhouse I'd been begging for." I nodded, confused by the random memory. "You spent hours helping me arrange the tiny furniture," she continued. "And then you fixed the little staircase that broke the first day. I remember thinking how patient you were, how good at solving problems. You were always like that," she added after a pause. "Always helping, always fixing things for everyone else. I guess I never really thought about what you wanted or needed." It wasn't a full acknowledgement of the family dynamic that had hurt me for so long, but it was something. A recognition, however small, that I had spent years accommodating others at my own expense. "This place suits you," she concluded, looking around at my handiwork. "It's beautiful and strong." Like you. That comment, so simple yet so meaningful coming from the sister who had rarely seen me clearly, touched something deep inside me. Not because I needed her validation, but because it suggested that our relationship might evolve into something healthier as we both continued to grow. As months passed, my life in Willow Creek took on a rhythm that felt increasingly natural. I negotiated a hybrid work arrangement with my company, spending 3 days in the city office and working remotely the rest of the week. The decrease in commuting time and the lower cost of living in a small town allowed me to accelerate my mortgage payments while still enjoying a higher quality of life. My social circle expanded beyond what I had ever experienced in the city. There were Friday night dinners at the local diner, Saturday morning hikes with neighbors, community events where everyone knew my name and greeted me with genuine warmth. I started teaching a monthly workshop at the town library, sharing basic marketing skills with small business owners who couldn't afford professional services. My relationships with my parents and Jessica continued to evolve, with small steps forward and occasional retreats to old patterns. My parents never explicitly acknowledged the years of favoritism or apologized for the birthday dinner incident that had sparked my transformation. But they did begin to show more interest in my life and accomplishments, making the effort to visit my house every couple of months and including me more thoughtfully in family decisions. Jessica, surprisingly, made the most significant change. As her wedding planning progressed, she made a point of asking rather than assuming when she needed my help. She drove out to Willow Creek one weekend specifically to get my input on her wedding website design, acknowledging my expertise and treating me as a valued consultant rather than free labor. When my 29th birthday approached, I decided to host a celebration at my country house. I sent invitations to my city friends, my new Willow Creek community, and my family, explicitly stating that I understood if the distance was too great for some to attend. To my surprise and delight, almost everyone accepted. The party was everything my previous birthday should have been but wasn't. My house and garden were filled with people from all parts of my life, mingling and connecting in ways I couldn't have imagined a year earlier. My parents arrived early to help set up, bringing a beautiful cake from my favorite bakery in the city. Jessica and Travis brought champagne and a thoughtful gift for my home. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over my property, Jim from down the road raised his glass in a toast. To Sophia, he said, who came to Willow Creek as a stranger and became an essential part of our community, who took a house that needed love and transformed it with her own 2 hands, who reminds us all that it's never too late to build the life you truly want. The words brought tears to my eyes, not from sadness, but from the profound realization of how far I had come in just 1 year. From the devastated woman crying alone in her apartment after a ruined birthday to the confident homeowner surrounded by genuine affection and respect. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, my mother pulled me aside. "I want you to know," she said quietly, "that your father and I are proud of you. What you've created here, what you've become, it's remarkable." "Thank you," I said simply, accepting the compliment without needing to unpack all the complicated history behind it. "I know we haven't always been the parents you deserved," she continued, surprising me with this acknowledgement. "But we're trying to do better." It wasn't everything, but it was enough for now. Healing doesn't always come in dramatic moments of perfect reconciliation. Sometimes it's a slow process of small changes, new boundaries, and gradual growth on all sides. As the last guests departed and I sat alone on my porch swing, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The painful birthday that had initially seemed like such a devastating blow had actually been the catalyst for the most significant growth of my adult life. In losing what I thought I needed from my family, I had found something far more valuable: my own strength, my own vision for my life, and the courage to create it. The house around me stood as physical proof of what I was capable of, but the true transformation had been internal. I no longer measured my worth by others' approval or defined myself primarily through relationships with family members who couldn't see me clearly. I had learned that self-worth comes from within, that independence isn't selfish but necessary for authentic living, and that sometimes the family we create through friendships and community can be as nurturing and significant as the one we're born into. Looking out at the stars above my little piece of the world, I felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would surely be challenges ahead, but I knew now that I had the strength to face them. I had built this life with my own hands, one decision, one boundary, one renovation project at a time. And no one could ever take that away from me. What about you? Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's rejection or betrayal became the unexpected catalyst for positive change in your life? When did you realize you needed to prioritize your own happiness instead of constantly seeking others' approval? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the most painful experiences can lead us exactly where we need to be. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to build your own version of home, whatever that looks like for you.